Hey everybody, this is Ann. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips. Actually, on the Reaper Twitch for once. We are back. We are back with a vengeance, or at least we're back with a moderately present motivation. How about that? I don't know if vengeance is perhaps a bit strong. Yeah. Sorry. You know, it's the 5-minute start. The 5-minute start is the usual start for us. Hello. It's Monday, everyone. Aw, thanks for the wing, Quindy. Yay. Boy. Yeah, it's Monday. Everybody's like, hi. We've all been up forever. La. You're West Coast. Well, no, there's some West Coasters on there, I know. Yes. It's definitely a Monday, but we are going to do Rock Troll today. Normal, the quote-unquote normal schedule. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Margaret, for the wings. The dragon wings with the paintbrushes. They're so cute.
How is everyone, too, by the way?
Oh, it's Monday.
It is Monday. That is true.
Definitely Monday. Everybody seems pretty hyped, though. That's good. Y'all enjoyed ReaperCon, I know, because we talked about it last week. But you should let Justin know how much you enjoyed ReaperCon, because, you told me, but you didn't tell him.
Also, I didn't get the chance, because obviously it was a 90-mile-an-hour dead sprint, right? Thank you for picking up and doing your streams yourself on your channel the week leading up. So I didn't know if I got a chance to thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I mean,
not streaming that week was unforeseen. We expected to be completely set up the Friday before, not the Wednesday or the night before.
Yay, we've got a sub already. Image and MCC War kicking it off with additional subs. Hey, do we know where we are our count on subs toward our next AMA and giveaway, Justin? Do we have any clue?
I haven't looked at it in a long time, and since I'm back and forth, I need to get I have a document on my home computer at this point.
Oh, okay.
I have to get things resynced up. So as we fight to hit our stride again in the next 3 weeks.
Right, exactly. Okay, cool. Let's see here.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we're in this is a ballpark. I believe we're between 20 and 40. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. My guess was 30 to 40. That's what my guess was. I'm gonna pop over to the mini.
Right. Yeah. Some number in the back of my head is like, I don't know. It's thinking like 32. It's really specific. I don't know that that's correct or not, but I would say that we're not more than 40, but we're not less than 20. Or in this case, We'll go with 30. So we're between 30 and 40.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That sounds right to me. Since we had one not long ago, and then ReaperCon totally steamrolled everything. So we are setting up for our rock troll here. Just putting some paint into some palette. But yeah, I didn't mind streaming. I mean, it helps get me paid, so yay! And also, it let me I like my morning routine. I really like doing my morning stream. It gets me ready for the rest of my day. Like, I'm one of those people who, when she's freelancing, needs a part-time job. It just helps. So I did not mind at all. Setting up and streaming every day, just like usual, just from my own channel. And hey, it gets Painting Big some more exposure. We had good average viewers, so I'm getting closer to my average viewers that I would need for a partner. So that's nice. So yeah, it was a plus on both sides. Let's see here. Where is my brushes? Oh yeah, they're buried. I was doing a lot of prep work this weekend, so I was and sculpting, filling stuff. So brushes. All right, let's see. We're gonna need tiny brush today, or at least small brush, because we have smaller gems, and I don't think I want to do them with the number 1 Raphael. So we'll reach for the Da Vinci. Yeah, and I always found that was true. Back in the day, the last time I tried to freelance, I learned that very hard lesson about myself, that I'm a much more productive freelancer if I have a little bit of routine, whether it's a part-time job or a commitment of other sorts that gives structure to my day. And then I can essentially base my entire rest of my schedule off of that, and it helps me be successful. So, totally a thing. And yeah, I mean, a lot of us are learning that, right, with the COVID stuff. Oh, I forgot to touch up his muscles when I had the green out. Oh, well. Tough rock troll. No touch-ups for you. We'll have to wait. All right, so I want that arm in focus. Let's see if I can kind of frame my fingers around it at the appropriate depth of field and get that arm in focus. There we are. Hello, Dragon Eye. Hello. Hello to everybody. Yeah, Val, we're over here today. Justin has risen from his deep slumber, and we are resuming normalcy. Well, okay, as normal as anything gets. So I'm mixing up. Remember, we used Dungeon Dwellers colors for this troll almost exclusively, except for the black indigo. So I've got a puddle of black indigo and some Eldritch Purple, which is our purple for our gems. And then a mixture of like 4 drops of Eldritch Purple with 2 drops of Vampiric Mist, which is our white for today. And then a puddle of Vampiric Mist. And Vampiric Mist is honestly close enough to white that if it is the lightest color on this troll, it will look like pure white. It's all that kind of... that kind of thing. Oh, and for those of you who did the 4-color challenge for ReaperCon, and who are James Gurney fans, like I am, he's the guy who did Dinotopia, and he also has done the great book Color and Light, which a lot of you own. He does produce videos every once in a while that he sells, and eventually a lot of it ends up on his YouTube, but he just put out a triads, which essentially is painting with 3 colors plus white. And he just put out a new video. And it's like an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, I want to say. But it's all about like techniques and the way to do that, the way to paint that way, and some of the tricks and tips and stuff. I've actually not picked it up yet myself, but I am totally going to, probably later today, because I love James Gurney's videos. He's a really good instructor, and he explains things really well, and he shows things really well. So if you are interested, it's like he does it on Sellfly, so I think it's like $17.98 for the video. And it lets you support him, of course, because although, Dinotopia was big in its day, nowadays I think he mostly survives on like some royalties from that and like commissions and things like that. So I do like to support him since he's done such great work for the art community and unknowingly for our miniatures community with his books. So yeah, just a little plug there for James Gurney. No, I'm not being paid by James Gurney to give you this advertisement. But it did fit in with the 4-color challenge. There we go. So I've just added straight up. I just add 2 drops. This puts all of my colors at about a 3-to-1, which is the thinnest that I'm going to work with usually. Yeah, Val, this is a little bit, the big crystals are different, right? And if you look up the original series, or original episode where I did this big one here, I talk about, like, how we figured out, like, I used a reference photo, and we figured out how the lights and shadows should be, and how to put the little cracks and stuff on there. Little gems, though, can be tougher, because you have so little area. You don't have all this room to do all these details. What you're really doing here is you're picking out a couple of big gems, and you're doing the full treatment on them. And then with your littler gems, you're just kind of hitting the basics. And what that does then is the eyes will catch those big gems and interpret them, and then the little gems will all look correctly. It's like all I did for the rest of these top gems was throw shadow on and hit the highlight on the facet that was facing the right direction. And yet the fact that this gem is done entirely makes the rest of these gems look a lot more done than they are. So yeah, use a cheap brush. Lately I'm using my my big long brush, which is actually a good brush, but because it's a big long brush, I haven't gotten any paint into the ferrule. And if you do honestly get paint into the ferrule, that's what your Winsor & Newton brush cleaner and restorer is for. I wouldn't use regular brush soap to try to get the paint out of the ferrule. I would definitely use the Winsor & Newton stuff, because that stuff's crazy. It'll strip the paint off your brush handle if you're not careful. But it will get up there and get the paint out of the ferrule if you've got a problem with that. All right, so let's see here. So right away I want to lay down some purples. So I'm going to be popping and doing some little spot blends. I need to examine my gem. So the principles of my gem so far are that, I've got a very light face that's facing the light. That's coming from this direction, obviously. It's coming from slightly slanted, just like we've painted him. And so my challenge here is to fudge out which area on these gems is going to be kind of where that is. And I may need to kind of fudge it, because some of these gems are going to be pointed like directly at the light source. They don't have necessarily a face facing that way. When that happens, I'm going to cheat and default to the raised surface. The surface that is pointed upward. And I'm going to kind of block a bunch of those in. Since this is already done, painted with the Eldritch Purple, and then done with a black indigo kind of wash over it. You can see the shading, right? And so I already have kind of a basic shadow set up just from that little wash or paint on. I guess I painted all around it. So a little bit like a targeted wash. I left some of these central areas a little lighter. You can kind of see it. So our first task then is to place our purples. And we may need to mix a little bit, because some of these gems have gone so dark, we may need to mix a little bit of this Eldritch Purple with a little bit of the Vampiric Mist. And we're trying to figure out where our up surfaces are. So in reality, I've got a couple of up surfaces here. This one's kind of split. So I would say paint your base coat and then lay in shadows. And the shadows at the beginning are actually going to be where you think they are. So they're on the downside or the away from the light side of the gem. So like you've got your light side here where the light's coming down, and then right behind it, see, you've got shadows. So that's basic. Like you don't need to think too hard at this stage of the gem painting process. You just need to paint the underside of things dark and the upside of things light. And this is something where if you haven't mastered overhead lighting, this will help you to do so, though it may be a bit frustrating for you because gemstones are not an easy technique. They usually when you're coming to doing gemstones, you already have a firm understanding of overhead lighting. So if you haven't gotten your zenith lighting down, this is, it can be both easier and harder because, I mean, obviously they're angular surfaces, so it's pretty evident which ones are facing up. And you want to just paint the facet that is pointing up. And sometimes, like our little gemstone up here, there are two facets that are pointing up. And we'll decide which one gets the brighter highlight as we progress. But I'm mixing a little bit of this Eldritch Purple plus white with base Eldritch Purple because I want a little bit of a more saturated. Some of these little guys got kind of suffocated under the wash. So I'm just going to pinpoint those out. Just like I did up here where I just kind of grabbed and highlighted just with little dots some of the tiniest gems. You're not going to be able to do anything with those. Nothing like really detailed. So, and we are going to come back even lighter with this highlight surface. But this at least is going to make us get our gems kind of laid out. Figure out where they are. Figure out where our light side is. And do it that way. But yeah, everybody wants to run before they walk. And so often people are like, oh, I want to learn to do gemstones. And I'm like, do you know layering? Do you know zenith? They're like, no. It's like, all right, well, you can try it. And it may help you to learn layering and zenith, but it's going to be more frustrating than if you already understood those things. I don't find gems and crystals to be very difficult. It's all about imagining the light. So that's why those techniques are core in learning to do this sort of thing. Gemstones are a lot like NMM in a way, in that you need to imagine your light source in order to make them successful. But instead of having reflected light, you have transmitted light, which is light that is passing through a translucent surface. Which is one of the most difficult types of light to portray in miniature painting. See here. I'm going to shove this out of the way because you guys know what colors I'm using at this point, and I don't want the white in frame, so I want to be able for you guys to see the surfaces I'm doing. Hey there, Taz. Thanks for gifting that sub. Justin will get a more precise count when he has time to look at his spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet. Like I'm that organized.
Oh, come on. I'm trying to, like, make you out to be a genius.
Oh, I am, but more like the like Einstein, where everything is everywhere all of the time.
Yeah.
Just crap everywhere.
See, Val, you can print everything in clear resin, but then that doesn't help you be a better painter. This is the thing. There's a lot of tricks out there that'll let you get fantastic results on models, without having to learn this. But then you're not learning this. So it's your goals, right? It's what your goals are. Like, because I know modelers have all these tricks to make things, look the way that they're supposed to be, and using transparency and using, that sort of trick. But then that means that you're not learning to do it this way. So It's like, and a lot of those techniques are easier when you actually use a translucent. Like if you shot gems in translucence, yeah, you might, if you found a transparent paint that you could put over the top, you'd have probably an easier time making realistic looking gemstones. But you also wouldn't learn to do it this way. So it's all your goals. It's all your goals. And that essentially means that you are embracing the light conditions and the environment where you are. And painting is all about creating the illusion of something not necessarily being where you are. It's somewhere else. It's where the miniature is. And so it just, like I said, it's an art thing. It's a choice, right? Depending on, are you giving yourself up to the environment, or are you learning to manipulate your environment? Or the miniature's environment, I should say. Hello, celery. Let's see here. Trying to get everybody together here. Trying to catch up with chat. I have way too many arrows on my thing. The Boat of the Damned. I've seen it done kind of like glowy spectrally, Rackham. If it's a sheet and you spread it out all over the place, it's a spreadsheet. Yes, Quindy. I totally. Awesome, Dogfather. Thanks for the renew. The corgis don't want you to hear. Yay! Yay for the prime sub, Dogfather. Hey, Dilbert Dog, how's it going? So yeah, so what you want to do when you're doing gems. This is, I mean, I'm going to simplify it. Doing these little gems is the easiest because you only have to hit like your main highlight, your main shadow, and a little bit of other color, a touch of other color here and there. And I mean, if you have trouble visualizing which surfaces are toward the light, and you're doing overhead lighting, that's the easiest thing. You drop a plumb line or a brush line from straight up, or in my case, slightly angled up, and see what surface that would intersect. And that's your light right there. And then it's just getting comfortable with shadows. Like after that, that's really the hard part, is getting comfortable with not highlighting every surface to the same level. Like instead with making much higher highlights on the upper surfaces and much lower, much deeper shadows on other surfaces. That's the challenge, right? Because it's very easy. When I started painting, I was very much in the Games Workshop style, which is what I'll call it. Which is very much just highlight everything that sticks out and don't worry about light. You just, if it sticks out, you highlight it. And if it, is recessed, you shade it. And that's good as far as it goes. But if you want to get a cool dramatic lighting effect like Mr. Troll, you have to learn to think a little different. So again, it's all about your goals as a painter. Eventually, I decided that I was really sick and tired of the Games Workshop school. And I wanted to learn overhead lighting, zenith lighting, because I wanted my stuff to look more real. Less cartoon. And that was something that I wanted since I was a 2D painter, as I always felt my style was very cartoony. And so with miniature painting, I had progressed a lot farther and I was a lot closer to being able to obtain that goal of mine of being able to make things more realistic. So that motivated me to go there because that's the style I wanted. I've always wanted a more realistic style. So it's highly ironic to me that my style with pencils and traditional art still remains very stylized and cartoony. But on miniatures, my style is one of the more realistic ones usually out there. So it's a great, it's kind of silly. Yeah, when you're doing the translucent stuff, you've just got to be really lightweight with, you can punch your highlights. That's just fine. But you're right, Rex, because it's going to cause a shadow. Like the water weird that I painted, when I put white on it anywhere, it would cause a shadow, underneath it if the light is from above. And so you do have to think about that. And like things with the water weird where it's in its stony basin. So once I base coated all the outside of that stony basin, the water down in that basin went very dark blue because there was no light coming through it. So things like that. And I think that's its own challenge. I think that can be fun on its own. For sure. Well, right. Light would go through them. So what you're talking about is a lot like regular, NMM, right? Okay, so NMM, the light comes in, you've got a shadow, and then you have an under reflection. It's the same thing here. It's just light bouncing. So light goes in, there's a shadow right behind it, light bounces down here and reflects back up into the gem, making a lighter area. Now, there are some other tricks I did here, but that's the basics of it. Like right there, it's like it's still highlight, shadow, highlight. It's just a different reason and a slightly different placing, and maybe a little bit of a different scatter effect than with NMM. And maybe you've got a little less, like you have a little bit more, like with NMM, this lower face here would have a dark shadow right under it, right under the rim here. But because it's a gemstone, it doesn't, because there's still light hitting here. And so I did both of these faces. This is where you need a photo reference. Like, I took this directly from a photo reference, and that's why it looks right, is because I studied the photo reference and figured out how to deconstruct it. Yes, Panache, but that's color choice. It's not paint style. And actually, he is more cartoony because I went with the dramatic zenith lighting. So if you look at my normal work, you know, Anne's normal style, it's very realistic. It's very realistically highlighted dog hair. So, you know, with my normal style, it's very not cartoony, as I actually have been kind of penalized in the past for not having an over-the-top style. The troll is very different from my normal style, and it is much more cartoony and much more dramatic. But that's why I wanted to try it, right? You're always pushing your style. No shadow in the crevices usually rocks because the light's going to go down there and kind of reflect up. Yeah. I mean, you'd get shadows in the crevices maybe where the crystals are crowding up against each other. The light would come in and it would still bounce around a bit, but you might not see the depths of the crystal, like, because they're all really crowded in here. So I'm going to say there probably is a bit of a shadow in there. And that's where you have to, that's where you really aren't going to find a cluster of crystals exactly like this to look at. So that's where you kind of have to use your imagination. And that's where you're not going to get super realistic. You're going to just get, you need to generalize at that point. Let's see here. Not bad. Hello. No problem. Nausicaa? I try to explain the reasoning, and it really does. This is why gems are difficult, though, right, guys? Because it isn't just that simple. It's you eventually need to extrapolate a bit to make them look right, and you have to sometimes use your imagination and make a judgment call and then correct. And this is all about the same. We're back again to, you know, how to learn anything in 20 hours. And the first thing is deconstruct the skill. So deconstruct where your highlights and shadows basically go. And the next step is learn to self-correct. In other words, learn to troubleshoot. Why doesn't it look right? Am I putting my light in the right place? You know, things like that. So, and that's where you can get creative. Once you know how to self-correct, you can get creative with these, because you'll be able to tell yourself, oh, that doesn't look right. What am I doing? You know, and then correct. So it's the paint style, not the subject matter, guys. Realism is a paint style, not a subject matter. Look at, that's what James Gurney has. Actually, to bring up James Gurney the second time in this stream, I believe his other book, other than Color and Light, which is useful, is Imaginative Realism. And that's exactly what his stuff is. I mean, the man is painting dinosaurs, you know, and science fiction critters, but they look like he's painting them in a realistic portraiture manner, you know, with realistic lighting. And so it's when I talk about a cartoony paint style, I'm definitely talking more about like very unrealistic cartoony or over dramatic, you know. Technically, even this could be realistic, but because I've gone over the top with the shading and highlighting, it may look a little bit more anime, you know, just because, but that's a paint style. It's definitely a paint style. If I was painting this in my traditional style, I would be painting it very differently. Yes, Dark Sword. Light should go through the first one, and then where you have the second in shadow, would it not have light instead of shadow? No, Val, because you always have, what happens here is you're working with diffused light. So you've got a pinpoint of light, and you can see this most often on like the round gems, the round Games Workshop gems that they paint. You have a pinpoint of light coming in, and there's shadow around that light because the light hasn't diffused yet. The light needs to travel through the gem and bounce. So the light enters as a point, And once it gets down here, it starts to bounce. So you've still got shadow at the top, but the light doesn't immediately scatter unless you've got like a quartz that's really dense. Like if you have a really shattered and fractured rock, like even like opal, opal isn't going to show this type of effect because opal has so many fragmentary facets inside of it and a lot of water as well. So it's immediately diffusing the light and it's not going to get this effect. What you get this effect with is clearer crystals. And once you get a lot of too many fractures and fault lines and faults and things that cause the light to scatter right when they enter, then you stop getting this shadow effect. So you aren't thinking of it incorrectly, but you need to think about the actual material that you're dealing with. Is how many fractures? How clear is it? If it's clear, you're going to get this effect. If it's not clear, if it's got a ton of fractures in it, you're going to get more like a white quartz that you maybe get one highlight and then everything kind of looks the same. Hi, Kiri. Can you settle? I know David's out there in a meeting. I know, Doglet. You've got to settle. Well, and there you go, Jelly. It's like, you know, you got to think about... Yeah, but it's yeah, Panache, exactly. Talking about you know, realism in a very unrealistic model. But it's actually, yeah, it's a I mean, I could be painting a human this way. It would be like the same style. Like the style of paint is independent of the subject matter, I guess is one way to put it. And you could go, like you could take a subject and make it, well, actually, here, let me show you. So there are two paint jobs on this Templar that I have, this Templar bust, right? And one of the paint jobs is very stylistic and painterly. So let's see if I can back up and show you. So same subject matter. One moment. I dropped Justin out of my ear and we don't want to do that. All right, so this is one paint job on this model. And it's very cartoony. It's got a lot of black lining. It's got a lot of weird colors. It's, you know, it's very, the lighting isn't particularly realistic. It's somewhat realistic, you know, but it's a bit over exaggerated. And that's one. And then you turn over and you get the hyper realistic paint job on this side. And they're both the same model, same subject matter, but one is realistic and one is not. So that's what, when I'm talking about realistic, I'm usually talking about the style of painting, because I'm always painting fantasy or science fiction or something wonky. I'm seldom painting a historical, although I do paint Vikings on occasion. So when I talk style, it's independent of subject matter. But yeah, so Jellyware, the thing is that the more refraction you have, the less reflection you have. Like, the less clarity, right? So you can either choose to go with clear crystal, or you can choose to go with very cloudy crystal. Very cloudy crystal is just going to be painting like marble almost. Like, it's not going to... It can be a lot more complicated, but it's going to kind of be a randomized surface. Like, trying to paint it at this scale, probably you're not going to get close to realism. Yeah, every artist you know recommends James Gurney's books. Yeah, Red Links, for a reason. Hold on. I'm trying to catch up and I'm, like, failing. No, Reaper does not have a style it requires in painting. However, Mathophile, there's a definite style that Ron likes in concept art. So you may notice some similarities among the sculpts. But, and not always, because our concept artist, Izzy, doesn't do every piece of concept art. A lot of the time, the sculptors will just kind of extrapolate and do their own thing. But Reaper has never. I mean, if you look and you notice, you'll notice every sort of paint job. If you see commonalities between Reaper paint jobs and our painters who have done them, it's probably because almost all of us are American, and so we all came from that quote unquote Games Workshop style background, the gaming figure background. Whereas I think in Europe, you get a lot more of the dramatic lighting and the unusual effects, because I think that art is less of a stigmatized thing over there. And art on figures has also been a thing for longer than it has been here. That's my personal pet theory, and it may not be true, but I just noticed certain commonalities. And there are definitely painters now in this country who are bucking that, but it took mini painting to really become truly international, where you had the Europeans coming over and giving classes over here, you know, and then the American school of thought like started to broaden, I think, about miniatures. Although a lot of us are still taught in the old traditional way and not in a more art-centered way, but part of that is also, I think, for ease of instruction. Yeah, it's a very anime villain type style, this thing. Hold on. Grabbing. I'm throwing my brush on the floor every 5th second here. Yeah, the first looks like a painting, right, Jellyware? Yeah, exactly. Well, scratches are the easiest things, Mathophile. Scratches are just like these little thin lines. I have a couple of them, like here and there. But scratches are like I mean, they're minute. They usually aren't going to be large enough to severely damage the surface, and they don't really impact the light because it's only a surface scratch. It's not gonna impact the majority of your gemstone. So really, it's clarity versus fractures. So it's really like, you know, grading a diamond. You know, do you have a perfect diamond or near perfect with almost no faults, or do you have a stone like quartz that's full of faults, you know, and you're going to paint them very differently because the light is going to pass through them very differently, and that's why they're graded the way they are, because usually the clearer gems give a more beautiful and unusual depth, you know, and color variation. So Izzy used to do concept art for every piece, and yes, Shadow Raven, it drove her crazy. James Gurney, Gurney. Color and Light is the one that I usually. Yeah, Nausicaa, we're talking about a lot of stuff. Some streams really go into like painting philosophy and art theory and all the background of miniature painting, and I don't know. I've been around for so long, I have a perspective on it, so I talk about it if it comes up. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They do overemphasize. They edge highlight, right? And that gives those miniatures, it makes them look better on the tabletop, right? Exactly. Is it Mia Mort? I think it is. Mia. I'll call you Mia. Oh yeah, I haven't plugged my Patreon yet. Thanks, Rubicon. Yeah, I do a Patreon as well. I love my Patreon to death. I also Twitch on my own channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig. And I'm trying to get more viewers so that I can get my average viewers up to a certain level. Everlina Wapple has really led the charge on the oil painting miniatures thing. I have not, but David and I just purchased a mini from Wapple that he was painting on in one of his streams, and it is an oil painted bust. So having that will allow me to kind of look at it and help me kind of deconstruct a little bit, probably. Although I did watch the stream where that bust was painted, and I managed to get, I think, enough out of it that I could give it a try. I personally would not use traditional oils because I'm very against solvent-based paint. I just don't like it. I don't want to breathe it. And so I have water-soluble oils, Winsor Newton Artisan line, that I would try it with. I think that I'd want to try it on a larger model because I'm sure you can do detail work on it, but I think I would feel more comfortable trying a larger model with oil paint. I actually thought about making that kind of a sub goal for my my own Twitch. Is like we hit a certain point and Anne will struggle mightily trying to paint a bust with oil paint, and then you guys can watch all my mistakes and learn from them. So yeah, it's definitely on my list. It's been on my list for a while, but I just didn't have the right bust for it. And I think I do have the right bust for it. Let's see here. I was using a gem reference. Red Links, I used a gem reference in the beginning. I looked up amethyst quartz and I got like a good gem cluster that I could essentially deconstruct the technique. Because that's the first thing you need to do is deconstruct what's going on. And from there, because I learned those rules, now I am able to paint the rest of this. So almost want to recommend you guys do that and just try to get a big chunk of jewel, find a good photo reference for it, paint it, understand it, and then you can extrapolate. There is no advantage, Wolfgang. It simply gives you a different style. If anything, there's disadvantages. Because it's not easy. It's not easy because your paint is always wet. So you constantly... Now, that's a plus if you're like Wapple, if you're used to working with that. You can blend it And, you know, you can blend it so much easier on small surfaces. But you can also overwork the surface in a way that you'd find hard to do with acrylics, because acrylics you just paint over it. But with oils, everything is still mixing together, and there's a long drying time. And so, you know, I don't think it's advantageous. Yeah. Where he preps the oil, yeah. Well, you've got to get it to a certain point, I would imagine, to use it successfully over miniatures if you're using it out of the bottle. Yeah, he every traditional oil painter I have ever heard, Panesh, says don't use water-soluble oil paint. However, having used traditional oil paint on a canvas and used water-soluble oil on a canvas, yes, there are some differences, but I'll take water-soluble any day. Sorry, no turpentine for me. No mineral spirits. They're not odorless. No, I'm not. It's just the way. If it's not as good, I'll just deal with it. The thing that oils have is this beautiful clarity of color, and you still get that with the water-soluble oils. So, since I am no longer used to painting with traditional oils, I'm more likely, I think, to be able to just like figure out how to work around any deficiencies the water-soluble oils have. But, you know, I haven't... Oh, is there a volume 2, Valfera? Volume 2 of Color and Light, you mean? Now I'm intrigued. I mean, what I really want to hear is one of these painters who talks against the water-soluble paints give me a breakdown of exactly what the problem is. Because so far, I haven't heard that. I've just heard, oh, well, they're inferior. Oh, yeah, why? If you don't tell me the why, I'm not going to believe you. I'm just going to do it myself and figure out if I like them, which is the important thing anyway. I already have them, for one thing, so I'm saving myself, you know, $100 worth of oil purchases right there. Let's see here. Yeah, he's an insane man, Shadow Raven. Wapple is amazing. I mean, it's Winsor & Newton that makes the water-soluble oils, Twisted Oma. Yeah, Rubicon, that's okay, so there's an upside and a downside to blending with oils. The upside is, oh my gosh, it's so darn easy. It's so easy to blend with oils. They stay wet forever. Downside, very easy to get too much paint on the model or get too many colors mixed together, and then you have mud. That's called overworking the surface. And then you've got trouble, because then, just like Wapple does, you're going to have to wipe off what you've already done, right? And that's the plus side, right? Is unlike acrylics, you're not painting over it, you're wiping it off. So, oh, interesting. Volume 2. Well, I guess I need to go and get the Volume 2 then. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, if most people... Wapple comes from a traditional oil painting background, so there's no reason for him to stick to water-soluble oils unless he's doing it for, like, health reasons or you know, like, other stuff. Because I'm sure they do dry faster, for one thing. I know that. They dry several days faster, so there's definitely going to be a difference in the surface, how it works, the drying time. So I could see how a traditional oil painter would try it, maybe get a little frustrated on it, and then just decide that they're just going to stick with what they're used to, right? Personally, I definitely have a strong belief in not liking solvents. So for me, I have an incentive to stick with water-soluble oils. That, and I like that I can clean my brushes with soap and water. Oh, Imaginative Realism is listed as Volume 1. Oh, okay, so that it's actually... Alright. So I have both books. It's just that it's kind of... He's rebranded, though, a little bit. But yeah... And it should be telling, right, that these are a guide for the realist painter, but he's not painting realistic... He is painting some realistic subjects in there. He does landscapes. He does a lot of plein air painting. He has some normal human subjects that he's painted, you know, and then he's got like dinosaurs and weird sci-fi critters and things like that. And I mean, I believe his point is kind of the same as mine, where it's not the subject matter, it's how you paint it. I mean, that's why Dinotopia was so good. It wasn't cartoony. Everything was painted as if it was real. And so you could believe in it. Which is why people fell in love with it. I'm just mixing a little bit more water into my paint. And now we're going to do some really lightweight facets. Look, we brought those up, but I need to actually put in a little bit more shadow, and I need to hit a much brighter highlight. Yeah, well, Gran, if I'll set that sub goal, and if we hit it on my my own stream, then I've got a bust from Black Sun that I've been wanting to paint, and it's a lot of scales, and it's Dragon's Daughters. I think it's Dragon's Daughters what it's called, but it's a scaly draconic humanoid figure with a cloth over her head and lots of horns, and so I think it's big enough detail that I could try the oil painting and maybe make it work. Yeah, well, yes, you use certain oils and solvents that evaporate fast, and he speeds it up. Yeah, I believe that missed him. It's just, yeah, I mean, that's, Gran, you and I are seeing eye to eye there. It's just, there's such a pain. All right, so I've kind of got a light now on my upper surfaces, and I've got a lot of color there as well. Now we need to do edging. Now, this is probably, if you look up here, you'll notice that I do have the edges done in white, and that's absolutely something you want to do when you're doing tiny gems like this. So this will also build your brush control. Never look at it as impossible, look at it as practice. But again, this would be a reason for, if you're new to this, pick a model or pick out the surfaces on the model that have bigger gems. It's also super easy to like just make a bunch of like gem-shaped faceted surfaces from like Sculpey and bake them up and then paint them for practice. So we've got a couple of lined rocks there. I want to bring in more light. I kind of want to blend between those. Blend between that white. I probably need to mix up a super light color at this point. I wiped out my lining a little bit there. Dry brush is going to give you a scratchy texture that's going to make all your gemstones look dusty, Wolfgang. Dry brushing is never the answer unless it's a very textured surface. I mean, it's if you just want to get it done, right? But if you're watching, if you want to get better, and this is, again, it's all about your personal goals. If you just want to get models done, then yeah, there are so many fast techniques that will give you a decent result. Well, I mean, dry brushing can be done to a very high level. I knew a guy who did it. He did his Lizard Man, his Games Workshop Lizard Man army, dry brushed, and he was amazing at it. And I mean, his secret really was that he was using he was actually thinning his paint a lot before he was dry brushing, so he was getting finer results. And he also would do a wash to hide the dry brushing texture, or what, I guess it wouldn't even be a wash, it was really more of a glaze. And it was still all fast for him, because it is still mostly dry brushed, and then he took a little extra time to make the dry brushing look more blended. Yeah. Yeah, and of course with pigments, yeah, you've got to dry brush pigments, they're dry. Then you need to seal, so make sure you don't paint your metallics before you do that. If you're using real metallic paint. There's all sorts of tricks. And nothing is cheating, you know? It's all your goals. But I'm a control freak. And so I like to control. I don't like to give my effects up to something else. I really don't like dry brushing because the dusty texture just looks kind of craptastic in my opinion. Everybody else can, argue against it and say dry brushing looks good, but I mean, I can dry brush with the best of them, folks, and I still think it kind of looks like craptastic. That's me, though. If you love dry brushing, do it. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. Let's see here. I've got actually a couple little facets here. And if I pick those out, it'll add to my realistic look on this gem. So what are we doing? I'm outlining. There's actually a couple, like there's a fracture down the middle there. I want to maybe do that dark. Oh yeah, never thought bad thing to talk about different mediums. Yes, everything's a tool. Yeah, and it's good to experiment with them, right? Like, I will whip out the oils eventually, just especially after we get this model. I have to say, I always promote this on my Patreon and stuff, but purchasing a model from a painter either commission work or, you know, you see them painted on stream and you ask them, hey, is that for sale? Which is what David and I did. Is a good thing if you're looking to improve, because it lets you have that model right up close. You can really see it. You can really see the brush strokes. You can understand better what they're doing. David got good, guys, because he commissioned and purchased a lot of pieces from people like Jennifer Haley and Sergio and Kirill. And then he spent time kind of looking at those models just at close hand and figuring out what they did. And the more you do that, I mean, that can really level you up fast. I mean, David has leveled up his painting really fast, relatively speaking. And a lot of it is having a collection, you know, building a collection and really looking at the collection, having it in front of you to remind you how these people paint and how this painter would paint this surface and so on and so on. So I always support people if they want to commission something, you know, from a painter, or build a painted minis collection that isn't even painted by them, because it really, not only do you get a bunch of beautiful little things to own, but you also, they're really useful to you as teaching tools. And you'd be surprised. I mean, compared to canvas painters, where you're paying thousands of dollars, you know, for the most famous canvas painters, or more, lots more in some cases. But, you know, for mini painting, collecting miniature art is so affordable, all relatively speaking. All right, so what I'm doing here, let's see here. Yeah, Mia. I mean, I do that too. I like to paint terrain as a break sometimes, just to crank it out, and I'll dry brush terrain all day, and it looks good that way, right? And that's not a problem. But sometimes, like, more often, I get my personal satisfaction out of painting something that I really love. And so for me, that means spending some time on it, and not using fast techniques. Yeah, Nomad Zeke. I feel it. There's a lot of expenses now. Yeah, it does. It does really help. Well, whenever it's like weird expense stuff, I always, I believe in the emergency fund. That keeps me from, that way I always have my emergency fund for those weird expenses, and I still have my little private savings account for fun stuff. I do a couple different, my finances are very structured because they've had to be. But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing that Wapple oil piece. Though with the way the Postal Service is slow today, or slow these days, it could be forever. Yeah, we had a bunch of Dwarven Forge. Like in my ex and I had, but it's so hard to carry around. So unless you're having the game at your house. But yeah, it's exactly like that, Gren, is making a copy of somebody's work. And not even making a copy of the whole model, but maybe just like picking out, okay, I want to look at the way that this person has really done a face, and I want to try to do the face the way they do, and put the light highlights where they did, and, you know, the shadows where they did, and see what I can do. Yeah. I don't know if David wants me to share that. David, do we want to tell them? I mentioned that we purchased a Wapple. Do we want to mention which one it is?
It's the Sword of Dawn.
Yeah, it's the Sword of Dawn that he did, guys. Like the Lady Samurai that I've been working on with the cherry blossoms, it was Wapple's version. So even better because I'm also painting the same bust, right? So it'll be a direct.
Like, sometimes it's annoying to have the same one that you painted yourself.
Well, as far as a collector standpoint, yes. But as far as a reference, a painting reference standpoint, which is what we were talking about, like getting a collection so you have a references to work from and try things, you know, try to deconstruct somebody else's style or what they're doing. So what I'm doing is edging these guys now all around where I put the highlights. And then I'm doing a little bit of blending. Yeah, it's very colorful. Wapple's version is very saturated.
Wapple likes color. At least that's the sense I get looking at his work.
Yeah, Rubicon has my point. Is the paint along on my Patreon, which is the $15 a month tier, is just like that. It's really just get the model, and I'll take you step by step through the whole dang thing.
Yeah, I think it's really good for learning to do that sort of thing.
Paint alongs, yeah.
Sometimes, it's you don't want to have that. Like, sometimes I'm really annoyed when I really like the box art for a miniature because then I have to think of something different if I don't want it to just look like the box art.
Yes.
Whereas if I really like the model, but maybe I'm not that happy with the box art, that somehow makes me happier.
Oh, that totally does. Totally does.
Because then I don't have to worry
like...
about doing something different. I can just do what I want to do.
See, for me, it's a direct insult when a really, really well sculpted model has a terrible paint job, and so I'll pick up that model just to redeem the poor thing with a better paint job. So it's a direct motivator for me if I hate the box art on a model, but I love the model.
Often, if I hate the box art, it's not necessarily because it's bad. It's just I don't like the colors or I don't like some of the choices they make.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, Chibi. Well, you know, Chibi, once it'll be done this month. We'll finish the Dragonkin, I think, this month, and then I'll let everybody know. Like, I'll let the whole Patreon know that it's done. So anybody who wants to upgrade to a $15 pledge can then do that and just can essentially download all the lessons. So then you can, at some point when you have some time, you can, you know, just utilize the lessons on your own time. That's the wonderful thing about this sort of thing, is that you don't have to keep up. Alrighty. Yes, what is this sorcery? Yes, James is totally a sorcerer. TJ, we were just talking about that a little earlier in the stream. No, my partner and I have acquired a oil bust, or it will arrive soon, a painted in oils bust, and then I'm gonna kind of look at it and put that together with what James has explained about painting with oils on his streams, and I'll give it a try. I used to paint in oils in art school. Like, I did a lot of canvas oils, and I always loved the medium. But then the great irony is I used to hate acrylics in art school, and now what am I? I'm a master of acrylics. So it's like the great irony of Anne's existence. But yeah, I've been saying that I'm going to try it. I think I have a bust now that I think I would like to try to paint in oils. So given that, I talked about making it a sub goal for my own Twitch channel. Sub this much, and Anne will make all sorts of mistakes painting this bust in oils. Hey, Roll to Explode! Thanks for the raid! Hold on. I'm falling behind here. I haven't actually put it up for a vote yet, guys. I have to, I'm trying to catch up on all my Patreon stuff. I've got coaching stuff I've got to finish up, still a couple of write-ups there. I have to get up the $2 video for you guys, which I filmed this weekend, and then I need to get caught up after ReaperCon. Then we'll worry about the paint along, because I haven't even, we won't even finish the Dragonkin until before the end of the month. So, yeah, totally. Yep, yeah, what we do. Hey there, yes. And hello, Raiders. We are painting Gems on Troll today. Yeah, I'm trying to catch up. Just like Justin, where it's like, ReaperCon is over. Oh, now I have to catch up with all the crap that we should have done before ReaperCon, or that was pending during ReaperCon. So yeah. That's funny, TJ. I always am amused. I know some painters get very uncomfortable with it, with the rockstar world of mini painting, as Jennifer and I used to call it. But I guess now I can't be embarrassed anymore, because I've been in the hobby for so dang long. I must be like the legend, the ancient legend or something. I don't know. It doesn't make me uncomfortable when people come up and say, "Oh my god, I can't believe I'm meeting you." It's like, no, I'm really a real person. Really, I am. I've just been silly enough to be a miniature painter for 3 decades, and that's why everybody knows me. I'm nothing special. I've just done this a lot. And there are plenty of people on Earth that are better painters than I am, or at least different painters than I am. I guess at some level you probably can't say better anymore. It's all becomes objective, right? Because when you get to a point where you have mastered your fundamentals, you can look at any other painter's paint job, deconstruct it, and equal it. Unless you're somebody crazy like what Darren Hahn, who does those hyper-realistic faces. And I'm still going to try to deconstruct what he does, because I think I could do it, because I'm just that foolish. And I'm really sad that like his tutorial on how to do the hyper-realistic faces is like in Korean or something, or Chinese, and not English. So I'm just going to have to look at the step-by-step. All right, so what we're doing, we are putting a white edge around each little gem where we figured out where the light is coming from. I've mapped all those facets out by putting a pale purple on them. Almost Lord Zyphrius, although a pencil would be more like it, but my pencil grip and my brush grip are exactly the same. So, you know, the fine motor coordination works with you no matter what you're doing. How do I think Virtual Reapercon went? I thought it actually felt unnervingly like the real thing, Jellyware. Yeah. Well, ReaperCon is permanent, but ReaperCon online is you know, we'll see what we do. Oh, cool. Well, that's great, TJ. Like, that's what I try to do. Like, if I do nothing else as a painter except inspire other people to want to try miniature painting, I'm just where I want to be. That's what I want to do. Like, that is my primary goal in miniature painting, is to inspire other people to try this hobby and believe that they can do it, because it really surprises people, and it really makes me happy to see how joyful people get when they thought they could never do anything artistic or creative, and then they get into painting and they apply themselves and they become like good at it, and it's just fantastic to see the way they light up. And everybody's got a creative urge inside of them, right? And miniature painting I think is an easier way to get in. You don't have to draw the sketch. You just have to, you know, put your vision in conjunction with the artist who created the miniature, right? So it's a way to be creative, all on a different level, and I think it's a little bit less intimidating, and it's a little bit easier to get in. But the things you learn with this hobby apply to regular art too. So by regular art, I mean 2D, right? 2D, two-dimensional. And so the classical arts. And so it's never underestimate the creativity and artistic side of miniature painting. It really, I can paint on canvas now. Like, if I set out to do a canvas painting, I'm going to do so much better than I ever did in art school, because of what I've learned about the fundamentals through miniature painting. Let's see here. Oh, fangirl all you want. It's not going to make me uncomfortable. I've been fangirl by the best. And I've watched other people fangirl Jennifer, you know, like at close range. It's like, don't worry about it. Don't be self-conscious about it. Just tell the person how much it means to you, you know, their work means to you. We always love to hear that. Yeah, I do try hard to help others learn, Miss Dim. That's kind of my raison d'etre. Like, I really, that's what rewards me. Two things in this hobby reward me. One, doing my best work possible and really being happy with the result. And two, helping other people to get to that happy place themselves, wherever their happy place may be on the wide range of results of mini painting. Yeah, Val, I agree with you that it's rare to find a great painter who is also a great teacher, and I aspire to be a great teacher. I'm always trying to up my game on that, and trying to help you guys, you know, believe that you can do it, which is half the battle, and then, you know, try to explain things in such a way that something, you know, lights up here, and it gives you guys the key you need. Oh, no problem, Roll One. Have fun. Thanks for the raid. No, Lord Cypherius. The trick is not having fine motor coordination. The trick is building fine motor. It's not something you have or don't have. It's something you gain through practice, because fine motor coordination is muscle memory. And so if you teach your muscles to remember, you will find that suddenly, out of the blue, you have fine motor coordination. Now, there are some illnesses and things like that that can definitely impact how far you can go with that. But never think that it's one of those things where you either have it or you don't. It's what you build it. I didn't start out being able to do all these fine little lines and fractures and things on these gems. But through building the brush control, I am now able to do pretty much anything I want. But it took a while, right? It's something you do that you just get better at it. It's why you get better the more miniatures you paint, as long as you are trying to improve your brush control. This is a Bones Black model, actually. This is one of the first Bones Black models. It's 4402, so it's the second one. Rock Troll. I believe. Afternoon, Zambies. How's it going? Well, if you want to draw and sculpt and write, it's about practice. I was a crappy writer when I started, and, you know, by the time I was in high school, I had been writing so many, like, short stories. The end of high school, I actually was winning, like, awards for short stories, as in kids circles, right? We went to a writing conference, and I actually took first place in science fiction and fantasy when I was 17. But it's because I was writing so much, and I was trying to get better at it. It's writing and painting are so similar. They're so similar. It's the same thing. It's first you got to deconstruct the things. You got to deconstruct the technique. How you put your sentences together. You know, how does storytelling work? And practice.
I still need a copy of that book, by the way.
Which book?
The one you
wrote.
wrote.
My book. Yes, I do need to send you. Okay, I need to put that on a sticky note. Justin, send Justin book. It's in the. I have a Sharpie. Send Justin.
Do you mind if I print it out to read it? Or
oh, not at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. Send Justin book. All right. Yay. Do you want me to send it to Reaper Mini or to your personal, if you have a personal email? I don't know.
Send it to my personal. Yeah, I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, just go ahead and just send it to me in a message or whatever. All right. So let's see here. Oh no, I've fallen behind. Yeah, there we go. Pieces and instruction. Yeah, a brush with a beautiful point. Yes, that is part of the battle right there. Yes, Jelly. Well, if you already draw and paint, you've got a leg up because you probably have some modicum of fine motor control that you've built. Though you may get to have, get much finer on these things, depending. You could start with bigger models and then work towards smaller models, Jelly, and that would probably actually benefit you, because then you'd start with more of a scale on what you might be used to and then work finer and finer, and that should refine your fine motor gradually. Yeah, if you learn to play guitar, you can learn to paint. I mean, it's just you have to care about it. Just do it. No, Val, I'm actually gonna submit it. I ended up having to cut an extra 10K words or so because it's a young adult fantasy novel, but they really want those to come in under a certain word count. So even though it's like finished and polished, now I'm having to like do like surgical precision cuts to it to preserve the story, but drop words. It's actually been such an interesting process. Learning to edit is a whole different beast from learning to write. So I'm doing like a little bit of a cut to get it shorter, but yeah, it's ready. It's going to go out to agents, and we'll see if anybody wants it. And if not, then eventually I'll probably go Kindle Unlimited with it. But I want to try traditional publishing first, because since I was a little kid, I've wanted to be traditionally published by somebody like Tor. So yeah, we're going to do that route. I have friends and acquaintances who self-publish, and the problem with self-pub is just that you're doing... I would have to do the amount of work to self-publish that I currently put into my Patreon in order to be a success at it. And I'm putting a lot of work into my Patreon, so I'm like, well, first I'm going to try traditional. But yeah, painting and writing have so many parallels. Oh my gosh. You read the 2,000 page. Yeah, but like Lords I Furious. Okay, so everybody is like kind of down on that sort of thing. Like, oh my gosh, the word count maximum. Traditional publishing is so screwy. If it's a good story, it should be published anyway. Okay, I agree with you on all that. But at the same time, having to do this edit has taught me so much about writing, because it has shown me where my writing could get tighter and better. And so, because I tend to be I use a lot of simile and metaphor sometimes, and I have a very, I was told that my prose was just barely short of purple, but everybody likes it, and it fits my genre, but like I could still get tighter, and my story could move better, right? So again, it's breaking down the techniques and learning enough to self-correct. So breaking down writing techniques, okay, I got it. But learning to self-correct is this editing. And so I think it's very worthwhile. I'm not going to diss it. Even though I may agree with you that, some stories should not be forced to submit to a word count in order to be their best. I must say that doing this has taught me weaknesses, has highlighted weaknesses in my writing style for me. So yeah. Actually, Lords I Furious, I write mythic fantasy. So I write stuff that's based strongly on folklore and fairy tale. So my book is based on my book is a fantasy that's set in a world based on Norwegian folktales. Not Norse myths, Norwegian folktales. Very different. The Norse have, or the Norwegian people have some of the richest folklore tradition in the world. They have wonderful, wonderful stuff. So yeah. Yeah, right. We're cutting plays for time. Yeah, the word counts do come from the realities of publishing, although it also comes from a certain assumption, Numbat, I think, with the young adult fantasy. They are basing it on the perceived attention span, but at the same time, it's been proven that kids will read longer books if the book is engrossing enough. So I think sometimes, and you do see some longer books published. It's just very difficult to sell those books, to convince an agent to take them, because the agent knows the publisher is looking for a certain length, and they're like, if you cut 10K words from this, it's going to be a much easier sell. And there will definitely, after this edit, there will be nothing else that I could possibly cut from my story, for sure, because I don't even want to tell you how many edits this thing has gone through, guys. Let's just say it's over a dozen, well over a dozen. For first chapter has probably been rewritten over 24 times. So it's work, right? It's work. But I love the work, and so I can do it. And that's the key, right? With mini painting or with writing. It's like, don't think you need to have patience to paint minis. If you enjoy it, you won't need patience. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, it's neat stuff, TV. if I get published, you are buying a copy. One way or another. Yeah, if I end up, if I get published traditionally, or if I decide to self-pub after, having no luck with agents, then you guys will be the first to know. At this point, I honestly just want the book out there. I put a lot of work into it. I really enjoy it. I'm still enjoying it, even though I'm editing it for the umpteen millionth time, so that should tell you something. Apparently, I am writing the right thing. There would be some people who would hate the book by this point. But yeah, it really is it's just doing. It's like deciding that you are going to do this thing and then doing it. And that's the hardest part, right? All right, so edging, had done our light edging. When we do our light edging, then, and we're only doing the upper surfaces at this point. A lot of these gems, it's going to be hard to do under surfaces. This one is big enough. So we can do a little bit of an under reflection here and a little bit of one here. But mostly what I'm doing is kind of generalizing here, and I'm doing that line, and I'm kind of blending up to it so that it kind of looks, you're still hitting the facets, but you've got that definite highlighted edge. So then we've got, we're going to tackle the dark shadow here. Dark, what do we time? Yeah, we got 15 minutes. Good deal. Or Celtic. Celtic is on the list. This is these books are kind of like, it's kind of like Redwall. Like the first two books are definitely like a duad. It's a duo. There are two books that tell the story. But after that, it's more like Redwall, not like Game of Thrones. So it's you follow different characters and you still go through the world and you still explore different parts of it and things happen and they are linked together, but it's not, if you read one book out of order, it's not going to kill you. Like every book after the first two is a self-contained story like the Redwall books. Which is kind of the way that I decided I wanted to write. Because you can still tell an overarching story then, gradually with each book. But it's not the focal point. Okay. My books have a lot in common with Redwall. It's the spirit of the thing. And I mean, there are a lot of talking animals in Norwegian folktales. And so I definitely have that going on as far as like, magical animal thing. And it's more the adventure, the spirit, like how Redwall is all about grand adventures, when it comes down to it. Grand adventures and legendary beings and, ancient prophecies and all that sort of thing. That's what that's all in my book. And wicked trolls. So yeah, and then I compare it to Watership Down a little bit too, just because there's a mythology, like there's a storytelling tradition in my fantasy world, and so you learn things about the world through the stories told by one or two characters. And I really like that story within a story tradition. It's why I always loved Stephen King as a writer, but I think The Wind Through the Keyhole is maybe my favorite because he does that story within a story pattern there, and I really love it. And then, yeah, other than that, it's a very, very strongly Norwegian myth or folktale. Yes, bless you, David. Lots of bless you, Davids. Yeah, Redwall, I mean, after a certain number of books, he gets repetitious, but like the first 8 to 10 are just fun reading. They're just excellent reading. He did such a good job of it. Yeah, exactly. If you read them in order, you'll get stuff out of reading them in order, Twisted Oma, but you also can enjoy each story individually. Like, you may understand the world a little better if you read them in order, because obviously there will be reveals of certain things going along. If you read them out of order, you wouldn't get as much impact from the reveals of how things work in the world, right? But you could still do that and still enjoy the stories. That's my goal. So yeah, don't worry. Eventually, you all will get there. You will get to read my book. I vow it. I swear it upon my honor as a miniature painter and writer. All right, so you can see how on the bigger gems, we can actually put the light bounce into that. We can put a little bit of light gathering at the bottoms of some of these. Some of these are broad, and they're really just kind of like pyramidical, like pyramids that are rising out of the skin. So you wouldn't really get much light fill probably down at the bottom of those. And what's more important with these tiny gems is just to hit those highlights so that they look shiny. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the original Watership Down. Yep, one of my favorite books of all time. And it was the first book that... It was the rabbit's mythology that I loved so much when I was a kid reading it. And that's heavily inspired me. And that inspired a lot of the way my current book ended up working. So yeah. Well, and other writers have learned from that tradition. I mean, Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time. The thing that makes his world so real is that he's got a lot of mythic verisimilitude. He has thought about his mythology. There is a reason for it, and it feels real. And that really goes a long way to making his world a real place. Just doing a little bit of reflection on this one. A little bit of light light gathering down, probably more on the one side. Let me get that fixed. Yeah, anthropology degree will certainly help with that. It's like World of Darkness for rabbits. Oh, dear. Alrighty. So just kind of looking here. If the light's coming down here, the light's going to gather in the opposite corner. So you want to make sure that wherever your brightest facet is, you've got the under reflection opposite it. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if there's a lot of noise and interference in these crystals, then you'll get you'll get more immediate diffusion and less of this dark shadow with the light gathering down in the corner here. But since I've already established that these are relatively clear crystals, I'm going to work that way. World of Darkness was Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, The Apocalypse, various games put out by White Wolf Publishing back in the 90s. My favorite role-playing game is Werewolf, actually. Oh yeah, The Secret of Nim. Yep. I think the movie still did a decent job. Like, it took Hollywood liberties in Ara, but the book is much better. And the movie is still enjoyable, I think. There are many cases, I believe, that the movie, even if it may not be perfectly in line with the book, the movie by itself is still enjoyable. I believe that way with Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I think that he definitely took liberties, but I also think that the end product is still an excellent product in itself. I'm not a purist that way. I think there's room for interpretations of the same story in different mediums in an enjoyable manner. All right, so I'm putting just some extra little highlights here. Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, Nomad Zeke, that's funny because when we watched that in my school, in our English class, we watched Watership Down after we read it, and some of the kind of like hard ass guys in my class were all just like, "I'll never look at a bunny rabbit again the same way." These are kids that used to take pot shots at bunnies, and now one of them had to admit in class that he wasn't ever going to do it again. Right, yeah. Well, Ready Player One as a book is so hard to turn to cinema. I mean, it obviously has like some excellent... It's obviously very cinematographic, but at the same time, to capture all the nuance of the book in a movie, it's going to be real hard. It's going to be a real hard ask. That's the thing with books, right? You get that extra depth and that extra feel that you can't necessarily put stuff into a hour and a half movie. Yeah, exactly. Right, yeah. Most liberties were to keep in somewhat Lord Zyphrius. I think that, if you look at Lord of the Rings and the challenges inherent of turning that into excellent series of movies, which I think Peter Jackson did, it's just a huge undertaking. Like, it's impressive that he did it. Like, and that he did it extremely well is like, at that point you're in Disneyland. It's like, holy crap, you pulled it off. So yeah. Oh yeah, the Plague Dogs is worse. Yep. Yeah, I feel like you're right, Crispies. Is Watership Down? The animated one was okay, but is very limited. But yeah, Watership Down, they still haven't nailed it. Possibly because, I mean, it is quite dark, and they tend to want to treat it as kid movie material, and it's like, actually it's not. It's really more of it's got a lot of adult stuff in it, a lot of adult concepts. Hey there, Jinky. Well, I know I got gems mostly done on this arm today, although we talked a lot about other stuff while I was gemming. Yeah, most books would be better served as miniseries. Yes, Lord Zyphrius, I believe I am in line with your thinking. Yeah, but then you would have had to you would have had to add minutes of time to the movie that was already really long to add all that stuff. And it doesn't have it's not about the story. So yeah. Like, I totally understand. Like, and I saw, interviews with Fran and her co-writer and Peter Jackson about it. I mean, it's like, you have to ask whose story it is. And the story it is like, Frodo and Gollum and the Ring, And so stuff like Tom Bombadil, which is wonderful to flesh out the story, just isn't needed in the, it fleshes out the world, but it doesn't help the story directly. So I see why they did that. Ugh. It's been like book club today, yeah, right? See, but I liked the Lorien elves at Helm's Deep, Lord Zyphirius. I absolutely liked them. I thought they fit much better. I believe that it's my opinion, and it may be unpopular, especially among like people who are very into Tolkien and preserving his work as it is, but I felt that was very suitable. Like, I could not see why the elves wouldn't send a force, right? And for Peter Jackson to essentially come to that conclusion and be brave enough to take it there, I think it made for a much better story. Yeah. Well, there's so many cool things in fiction all over the place, right, that we wish people would take and make into movies. Like, sometimes when I hear about a book that I think is cool being optioned by a filmmaker, I get all excited, but, optioned really doesn't mean a thing. But it gets me thinking about, ooh, what if this actually gets made? That would be so cool. Alrighty. So what I've done, to recap, guys, is originally we had our gemstones that were shaded kind of roughly with black indigo, and they were done with an eldritch purple over the original bones. Then we went back and we kind of took an eldritch purple and white mix, and we put light on every upward facing facet. Then we took our vampiric mist, sometimes with a little bit of eldritch purple thrown in if I felt like it, and we put edges on our upper faces, and sometimes we extended those edges. On big crystals, you can extend that edging downward and around. Then on the bigger crystals, we can also suggest the light that's refracting through the gem, and so we can put highlights on the underside opposite the light source. It has to be opposite the light source. So if this is your brightest facet, opposite it is where your light gathers down here. And the brighter that refraction is, the brighter it's going to look like, or the more clear it's going to look like your gem is. And after that, we just went around to some of these bigger chunks, and we highlighted their undersides. I just realized we didn't do this big guy. He's got lots of fault lines. Let's see here. So this is a bigger gem, so this is a good one to practice on. Just pretty much line around those facets. And figure out where your lightest facet is, and then your opposite is going to be down here. And you can color in some lighter color down on the underside opposite the light area. You don't want to lose your little lines on that gem, the little facet lines. So make sure you keep those. You can even add a little line at the bottom here if there's light coming in. See how that makes that stand out then from the skin. That's probably an artistic liberty, but works. Like that. So those are the steps on little tiny gemstones. And as you can see, I could do the whole arm. And unlike this, where it took like all show to like even block in like a small group up here, with these little guys, because they're much simpler, they're much smaller, you can get a good result with and do the whole arm just in like an hour and a half, and get a nice result. So, and they really glow. They really pick up the light, which is fantastic. So I think he's looking better and better. Yeah, Kariniko, I love Ilona Andrews, but I believe that Hollywood would screw it up. They'd have to... The problem with Ilona Andrews is I love her worlds. They're fantastic, but so much depends on the chemistry between the male and female lead that if you didn't nail that, you'd just be screwed. You've got to have the right chemistry. Like any great romance movie. If there's no chemistry between the male and female lead, or no real chemistry, then it's screwed. It sucks. But if you get that really good chemistry going, then it sells it. So, yeah, Anne McCaffrey Dragon Riders would be really cool if somebody finally picked up the Pern Saga. Because, I mean, there's a lot of excess fluff in there. You could probably condense that story down and make it like 3 movies.
I wouldn't mind doing that with the Wheel of Time series. You could
Wheel of
shrink
Time,
that down
whoa.
to like a movie or 2. Being that 80%
Drop
of
the
it is
travelogue.
ladies, yeah, travelogue and ladies sipping tea.
And ladies sipping tea. But you need that. But Game of Thrones on HBO has proven that ladies sipping tea is actually exciting as long as you're talking about assassinations at the same time, Justin. So, you know.
You're not wrong. But when I read that book series, most of the time it was very dense. It was never the dialogue was always very, for me it was very boring. It wasn't like, because I read the Game of Thrones books. He did a really good job with dialogue.
Yes. Yeah, you have to,
yeah.
right? To sell those scenes, to do politics, you have to be amazing at dialogue.
And I don't think, honestly, I think that Robert Jordan was great at creating epics. I just don't think the dialogue was
Yeah, I agree.
suit.
It wasn't. And his female characterizations, they're all the same. Just put a different dress color on them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Different hair color,
exactly,
different dress color, different weapon choice. There you go. I mean, that's why I kind of put him down. I might eventually read the couple that Brandon Sanderson wrote to wrap up the series just because I like Brandon. But yeah. All right.
He did what he could. I will say they were definitely more interesting than the previous 12.
Well, good. That's funny. Oh yeah, Wild Cards show. Yeah, well, you know, if George could get anybody to pick that up, I'm pretty sure he'd go for it because Wild Cards was his first. Like he loves his Wild Cards books. So yeah, Wheel of Time got very big. That's why I said I read the first 8. I'd skip the intervening ones, read the cliff notes on Wikipedia, and then go straight and read Brandon Sanderson's wrap up, and I think I'd get pretty much. I liked Nynaeve through the whole thing. Actually, she's like the only character really that kept me reading. I just wish that he hadn't wrapped up her relationship so quickly.
I'm trying to remember the characters' names. Was that the one who ended up being a magic user of some sort?
Yeah, and she was like,
With
she
a
was
healer,
kind of
maybe?
yes, she was, and she was kind of the one who was kind of the caretaker of the kids, like watching over the kids in the beginning, and didn't want any
Yes.
part of it, and then got dragged in. Yeah, and I really liked her. I liked her.
What I found to be the most interesting, if you remember too, I don't remember what part of the books it's in, but it's that couple that keeps being reincarnated, and she has a fascination for incredibly ugly men.
Yes.
And no matter what, every time they're reincarnated, they find each other.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
and
sort of
it's-
truth. Yeah, sort of truth, I think.
I love it.
Yeah.
I do.
It's cool. All right, well, my doglet's tail is kind of activating, so I think it's time to call this. I think you've managed to get a decent look on these crystals. And, there's going to be a Wheel of Time TV show? Well, we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, I think, do you have a raid for us, Justin? I guess is the appropriate word, right before Kiri fully activates.
I'm searching now.
Awesome. Oh, on Amazon Prime.
I actually read recently too, while I looked for this raid, that the Amazon Prime picked up a Fallout series. We're going to be getting.
Ooh, that could be fun. Like, actually, series that are based on video games that had good stories, I think have high potential. That would be actually really good. I mean, well, of course, I want an Overwatch, TV show or movie.
Let's raid. Let's see here. We can raid Mocha if you'd like to.
Yeah, let's raid Mocha. Yeah, these are some pretty dark crystals. That's true. Lord Zyphirius, I kept a lot of darkness in them, and I could totally lighten that up if I wanted to, but I kind of like the contrast. So, I mean, I've got some really dark shadows up here on the top too, because remember we have a very dramatic lighting effect in here. So, yes, thank you all for tuning in, and I will be back tomorrow morning on this thing, and then later today is Miniature Monday, I believe. Still, Josh, at 3 p.m. Central.
Yes, it should be.
Okie dokie. Yes. Yeah, Overwatch would make a good anime. But then we'd have to admit that Overwatch was an anime, and, there are people who still fight against that concept. Meme against that concept. Yes, thank you everyone for tuning in. It was totally fun, and we had a lot of you here today. Well, thank you for tuning in, and I hope hope you got something out of it and that you enjoyed it.
Thank
Let's
you guys very much.
let's go get that mocha.
Thank you guys for coming out. Like Ann said, check out Josh today at 3 p.m. And I'm looking forward to getting back into the swing of things, guys. I'm still going to be really busy because we basically have to finish the studio. But thank you guys for kind of tuning back in with us as we get back into our regular programming. Have a great day.